Tuesday, July 19th, 2022, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Today we're going to look at the 100-year plan or agenda for world government by the bankers. And you might say, oh, Mario, you're going deep into the conspiracy theory world. Well, maybe, but hopefully after having listened to me, your idea of things might change. But before I start, I'd like to look at a few headlines I saw yesterday that are very significant. And I'd like to thank as well all the viewers for your long-time support, short-term support if you're just new to the channel, for your interest in what I have to say, for your support through Patreon, through PayPal, through all your interaction in the comment section that creates debate and the community. And I will quote Graham Hobbs, one of my long-time viewers and supporters. He said that we're creating a community. It's more than just a YouTube channel. And that's what we're going to keep trying to do here. So yes, it's already quite hot here. Billy and I have been for a walk. Where is Billy? Well, he's right behind me. He's on the wooden floor. It's more comfortable. To put him on the sofa, he's going to be too hot and uncomfortable. I've already sprayed him with a little bit of water. We do have fans, but unfortunately I can't put them on when I'm recording because they're too noisy. But they're not that noisy, but the microphone catches the noise. So after we finish here, the fans will be going on. You can probably hear Billy panting a little bit. That's how dogs sweat, I guess. They don't really sweat like humans. So the headlines that I saw that I think are significant, and this has got to do a little bit with what I'm going to talk about, the bankers' 100-year plan, because I think the ultimate goal for them is to have a world currency, and I'll come to where they're going to run that from in a minute. So we saw a comment by U.S. Treasury Corporation Secretary. Some of you are right, it is a corporation. Yellen, she said yesterday the U.S. would impose severe penalties on countries that violate or disrupt international economic order. So there you go. I think this is a warning to China. And the other article that I thought was significant, and that is really closely related to this, is the fact that China has been dumping its holdings of treasuries. So Zero Hedge reporting here, China has dumped over 100 billion of U.S. treasuries in the last 6 months. So that's not surprising. And you can see that it's picked up really ever since that war in the Ukraine started in February, because, yeah, China and others in the global south, so to speak, realized that the U.S. could come for their reserves. So it's not surprising. And what this will do, of course, it's going to keep the ball rolling in terms of really dethroning the dollar as the major reserve currency. And the bankers need to do that if they want a world currency. The dollar is a competitor, right? So a 100-year plan, you might say, that's crazy. Well, I've never thought of a 100-year plan either, even though I know the people who run things, in my opinion, the bankers, and others, of course. It's not just the bankers. I think they're more like the financial agent for people even above them. They have very long-term plans. Their families have been powerful for sometimes even 1,000 years. You have the old aristocratic Italian and European families. I think they still have a lot of power. They're related to nobility, to royalty. Yes, and they intermarry. Yeah, even though they have these long-term goals and they look in terms of centuries, and 100 years is still a lot, I would say, for the bankers. But I watched a really interesting video on Lynette Zhang's channel, ITM Trading. Lynette, of course, has been on this channel. I have interviewed her. She's interviewed me before. And on July 15th, she had a really interesting guest, Dr. Ott, O-T-T. And I recommend this video. I'm going to put it up in the cards in the description. And he talks about when he started out in finance on Wall Street. They sent him for a seminar, kind of conference for the junior, for up-and-coming young like graduates. And one of the last seminar or last presentation, and before that, all the major Wall Street top guys spoke to these young people. So they saw them as like the future. So the last speaker was, they didn't know at the time who it was going to be, and it was Paul Volcker in 1984, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. And he walked in the lecture room or whatever it was, and Dr. Ott says that he took out $100,000 bill. They have these old dollar bills. It had Woodrow Wilson on it, and he crumpled it up, took his cigar out, his stogie, took the tip off, and then lit the $100,000 bill, lit his cigar, and threw the bill in the bin. The bin was actually on his desk, apparently. And then he took out some gold coins, and he said his advice was, whenever you can, if you have a profit, personal profit, if you are able to save, and he showed the 100,000, another 100,000 he had, if you're able to save these, you need to get rid of them and get the gold coins. And I think he asked some questions, and Paul Volcker basically said, the people above me decide everything. I'm just doing a job. You know, I have bosses way above me. And one thing he said is he took a $1 bill and another $100,000 bill he had. And he said, not in my lifetime, but most probably in yours. And this guy was in his early 20s. You will be able to buy what you buy now with $1. You know, this $100,000 will only be able to buy what you can buy now with $1. And that's what he said. So, but the interesting point he made is that there were people above him that were running the show. And I have looked into Paul Volcker. I've read his I think it was like a autobiography or kind of a book just before he died. And it's interesting that he was trained at the London School of Economics, which was founded by the Fabians. And Tony Blair is a Fabian. I would say Cecil Rhodes really helped found the Fabians as well. And the Fabians, they want to, their plan is to slowly chisel away at people's rights, individuals' rights, and create a world government. So, yes, Paul Volcker worked also for the Federal Reserve. He worked for Chase Manhattan Bank, all the big banks. So, I recommend you watch that. And then the other video that I recommend that will also help you understand how these NGOs, the tax-free foundations work, is G. Edward Griffin's interview with Norman Dodd. Very interesting. It's from the early 80s, but it applies to what's happening today. It's 52 minutes, and I really think you should watch that to understand maybe a little more what I'm going to go into here about the 100-year plan. So let's get to it because I have some other quotes and references to make, but let's get to why I believe it's a 100-year plan. And I only thought about this in the last 24 hours, which is weird. I hadn't put two and two together. I hadn't joined the dots. So there's a lot of talk about the 2030 agenda, right? The United Nations 2030 agenda. And so if you go back 100 years, you go to 1930, and you might say, what's so important about 1930? Well, it's when the Bank for International Settlements, which is the central bank for, the bank for the central banks, that's when it was founded. And there is information from them, the constituent charter of the Bank for International Settlements. You can find it on their website. And this is what it says. And this is as of 25th January 1930. And their statutes have changed over the years. But what's interesting here, it gives you who's really behind the Bank for International Settlements and why I believe it's a 100-year plan, the final 100 years, because they, of course, have been planning way before as well, to basically enslave you, to have world government. And why would a world government enslave people? Well, because it would be from a central place in the world running. You know, it wouldn't be local government. It wouldn't be decentralized. It's usually better for people within their own small geographical or cultural space to decide what's best for themselves. With this, that goes out the window. So this is what it says here. Whereas the powers signatory to the Hague Agreement of January 1930 have adopted a plan which contemplates the founding by the central banks of Belgium, France, Germany, Great Britain, Italy, and Japan, and by a financial institution of the United States of an international bank to be called the Bank for International Settlements. Of course, they will tell you this bank was created to settle the German war reparations, but these people always do things with other things in mind. It's like they kill 2 or 3 birds with one stone, so to speak, because right now Germany doesn't have any more war reparations. I think they've paid it all off. So why is this bank still around? So that's the ultimate question. I'm sure they had other ideas when they created this by treaty, as you can see. And I would say at the time, the central banks of Belgium, France, Germany, Great Britain, Italy, and Japan, they were all privately owned. And some of them might not be privately owned anymore, like the Bank of England, but they're controlled really by the bankers still. This is the interesting part of what American institutions own the BIS. And whereas the said central banks and the banking group, including Messrs. J.P. Morgan and Company of New York, the First National Bank of New York, New York, and the First National Bank of Chicago, Chicago, have undertaken to found the said bank and have guaranteed or arranged for the guarantee of the subscription of its authorized capital amounting to 500 million Swiss francs, equal to, and here it just goes to show you what is really money for these people. 145,161,290.32 grams of fine gold divided into 200,000 shares. I'm going to put a link to this in the description, and you can read the rest. The important thing here is it tells you who really owns the BIS. And if the BIS is the bank for the central banks of the world, and they're owned by the bankers, so who controls the world really? Who controls the money? As one of the Rothschilds said back in the 19th century, give me control of a country's money, and I care not who makes the laws. So this 100-year plan is important because it gives the bankers control of the world's money. And so they will make the rules. They will control everything. And that's why it's so important that we expose this. I'm not sure. Some of you might be more of a legal background. I'm not of a legal background. I would say that the way to abolish the Bank for International Settlement would be through an international treaty to rescind that treaty of 1930 in The Hague. So I'm going to reference a few more things here just to show you how the bankers, in my opinion, are involved in this. Well, we have David Rockefeller, who died a few years ago. I think he was over 100 years. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. And this is what he said in his memoirs, and I quote, "We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and the other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the lights of publicity during those years. But the world is more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national auto-determination practiced in the past centuries." So this is David Rockefeller, grandson of John D. Rockefeller. Oil made his fortune in oil, but they expanded into banking, of course. Chase Manhattan Bank, First National City Bank, which is Citibank. Who worked for Chase Manhattan Bank in the Federal Reserve? Well, Paul Volcker. So there you go. He talks here about a technocratic elite running the world. It's what the World Economic Forum is pushing as well. So another thing I wanted to show you is this picture here. This is from 1947, March 25th, 1947. And this is Trygve Lie, Secretary General of the United Nations, accepts John D. Rockefeller III, acting for his father, John D. Rockefeller Jr., a check for $8,500,000 for the purchase of the 6-block Manhattan East River site where the United Nations will build its permanent headquarters. Mayor of the city of New York, William O. Dwyer, is seen at right. Ceremony took place on the first anniversary of the Security Council in New York, Empire State Building, New York. So there you go. Who financed the UN? And you look at the IMF and World Bank, they're creatures of the United Nations. It was the bankers, and they were involved in creating the Bank for International Settlements. So it all adds up. I'm sure this Agenda 2030 has been in the works for a lot longer than we're told. If you look it up here, it says that it was only established in 2015, but the bankers, they've been planning this, in my opinion, since 1930, and they needed a world central bank to do that, and I think that's going to end up being the BIS, and that's why they have to get rid of the dollar as a major reserve currency. You'll still probably be using the dollar in the US, but there will be a world currency run from the BIS in Basel. And it's not really technically in Switzerland. It's a little bit like the Vatican, the city of London and DC. It's in Switzerland, but it has, it's a sovereign country, really, the Bank for International Settlements. And the central bankers, when they travel there every other month to meet to meet, to have great wine and wine and dine, and probably smoke their cigars. Paul Volcker probably did. They travel with diplomatic passports issued by the Bank for International Settlements, which is recognized, of course, and they can't be searched. So there you go. I think that's what's happening. So before we look at the markets, I just wanted to recommend a great book about the Bank for International Settlements, which I have recommended many times in the past. I could go on about some of the stories, but I won't. It's The Shadowy History of the Secret Bank That Runs the World. The Tower of Basel by Adam Libor. Very interesting. And I think he's right about this. So I'm going to try to find a free PDF and put it in the description. Or you can buy it as well to have the real book. So it's 8:33 a.m. London time. Let's quickly go through the markets here this morning. Spot gold is actually unchanged, 1709. We had the same old. Gold was strong prior to the US coming in, and then it weakened. High's been 11 and the low 05. Silver is up about 8 cents at 1875. The Dow future is up 50. The Nasdaq is up 13, and the S&P is up 8. FTSE is down about 30 points. Eurostoxx 50 is down about 0.75%. Let's have a sip here of my coffee. To the currencies, sterling is up 0.33%, just below 120. The euro is up 0.2% at 102.13. So the dollar has turned down a little bit here in the last 24 hours. The dollar is down 0.2 versus the yen at 137.90. Dollar's down 0.5% versus the Swiss franc at 97.20. And the dollar's down 0.1 versus the yuan at 6.75. Look at the ruble. Dollar's down 1% at 56.40 versus the ruble. So you'd think gold and silver would be doing better if the dollar's weakening here. Yes, but a lot of times you see the currencies rebounding and gold and silver don't do much. But I'm not concerned, as I said. These people are going to use gold, of course, for their world currency. And that's why the BRICS countries, that's why they're buying gold, because they need the gold if they're going to play the game. Even though they make it seem that they're fighting each other, right? The West, China and Russia. I personally think it's a little bit of theater, so they can do things in a way that makes it seem that it's not all planned. Who knows? You might not agree with me on that. Let's just go to the commodities. I won't cover the other currencies right now. It's getting really hot. So general commodities, WTI crude is trading at 99.80. It's up 0.4. Brent is up 0.25% at 103.50. High-grade copper is down 1.2% at 3.30. And U.S. nat gas is down 0.5% at 7.37. Quickly to the U.S. Treasury bond market. The 10-year yield is at 2.99. So that's up about 3 basis points. The 2-year is at 3.16, up 2 basis points. So the curve is inverted by about 17 basis points. So it has steepened a little bit by 3 basis points, but quite inverted still, I would say. So there you go. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Please share it far and wide. Think about subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. And yes, I'm going to wish you all a great day. Keep cool and take care. Bye.